So the standardized tests show that African Americans, our people, after adjusting for parental education, adjusting for income, we're at the bottom in terms of math scores. Do you feel like there's something cultural going on that needs to be addressed? Like money can't fix certain cultural impairments.
So there may be something culturally going on, though I might not be able to pin my finger on it. And it's not. It doesn't have to do with intellect and intelligence. I don't believe that the reason why I struggle with math is because I'm black.
Yeah, it's not a genetic thing, right?
But I think it is just the fact that I didn't necessarily have people that I could go to that could help me understand why I was struggling uniquely in the way that I was. I felt like my father was sort of good enough at math, but he hadn't graduated from high school.
Yeah.
And so he hadn't really seen the kind of math I was dealing with, and wouldn't have been able to sort of prepare me for what I was dealing with at that point. I didn't have a lot of, engineers, technical people in my family that I could go to and just be like, oh, you've taken college level calculus.
Yeah.
How'd you get through this, right? I just didn't have that. And so a lot of this stuff I had to learn the hard way. Now that I'm a parent, I can teach my son and my daughter how to deal with, upper level mathematics, but that's not something that I had. And so I think that, some of the problems that we find, particularly in the black community or in brown communities or some of these other underrepresented communities, is that there's sort of a breakdown in terms of the family network, the professional network is just not there.
Yeah.
And that itself is due to sort of the lack of opportunity that you find, in these communities, from everything from societal pressures, racism to all this other kind of stuff.
So staying with the potential cultural issue that's an impairment for a lot of us. You mentioned you were bullied by other black kids. You're into computers. I'm not trying to bang. I'm not trying to be a Pyru in Compton. I'm not trying to be, Snoop Dogg or Warren G or whatever. I'm not into that. I'm into computers, and the people bully you. Talk a little bit about that, and how did that kind of motivate you more, or did it really break your spirit at that time?
So at the time, I saw it as very unfair. Right. And I knew that I was doing the right stuff because my mother and my father were very much, on my case about doing well and applying myself, not just because it was the right thing for me to do and for my future, but, as a Christian, I want to hold up a good light for the rest of the world to see. And so it was very clear that I needed to be a person of upstanding character, and I needed to apply myself in the classroom, for God's glory and for my good. And so that's one of the things that they built into me.
It sounds like to me, if you didn't have that rock in terms of your faith, that the black cultural establishment, who's like, this kid's into, computers, he's a geek, he's a freak or whatever, the bullying, that would have broke your spirit. But it sounds like, you were a man of faith early on, and that helped you kind of survive that type of stuff.
No, absolutely. And I understood that there were these two options, right? I could either keep doing what I was doing and go down this path that few travel and see what happens, or I could give in to the bullying, sort of accept the hopelessness that I was sort of surrounded by and that I think other people gave into. I could accept that and live in that and be like they were. But I didn't want to do that.
And why do you think, I haven't really seen black leaders talk about the concept of cultural optimization, meaning that it's easy for everybody to talk about racism and what white folks are doing, what the government's doing, what the Republicans are doing, what Trump is doing. But have you heard of black leaders addressing a cultural issue where things that are good for us the people don't like, or the people in your case you'll get bullied. But if you're involved with criminality or pseudo criminality or chronic or partying a lot and that type of stuff, that's all fine and dandy. You can't attack that stuff. Have you heard black leaders talking about a person like yourself being bullied, and the only thing you want to do is kind of be a geek and read and be a good person?
I don't think that leaders have talked about that enough. I think for the black community, and even in some white communities, that suffer with the same kind of things that the black community suffers with, there's almost this culture of blaming other people, right? Blaming society, blaming racism, blaming institutions, as opposed to looking at I wasn't bullied by white kids growing up. I was bullied by black kids growing up, right? It wasn't.
But I just want to kind of crystallize for the audience is that the only thing Anthony D. Mays was into was computers, being into God. And this guy was bullied. And it's not just him. Of course, I had an instance in 10th grade right around the street from Compton at LA Adventist Academy, where a lot of the wannabe thugs would call me Carlton because of the way I talk. But I don't really hear black leaders talk about the retardation within the culture, because if you start to address that, white folks can't fix that. That's an internal thing.
Yeah, I mean, and look, when I remember President Obama some time ago talked about the need for black men in the black community to step up and be fathers
and they tried to bully him. Like, you can't blame, you can't address the victim. You can't ever hold black people accountable. We're the victims, and it always has to be about the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, them.
But I mean, from a theological perspective, I understand that it's not just one party's issue. We're all the problem, right? We're all, on both sides of the table, on every side of the table. We're both the problem.
True. A complex problem with a lot of different actors for sure, but don't you believe the community is overweight blaming? It's the system's fault. We're the victims, and we're underweight having the courage. You're not letting people off the hook. You're just saying, hey, if you're going to fix this in our lifetime, if we're really going to address this, we're not going to rely just on other people to fix this. There's certain things we can do. We can step up to fix our own community. And I feel like we're overweight on that. We're underweight on that side and overweight on the racism side.
Yeah. It's both. Because I do think that there are a lot of black and brown people that are getting overlooked that are qualified to be at a lot of these companies, and I think that's one part of it. It's not like they reached the end of their rope. They've done all that they can, because I don't believe that they've done all that they can. But I will say, but this is personal experience for me. Like when I said I was in an abusive relationship and stuff, I was with someone that was super a black guy who was super into sports. He always called me a geek, and he always put me down for being a geek, and so did his friends. His friends they were all they all were all bums for the most part. Seriously,
yeah, but that's an issue in the culture.
And then they would call me a geek and stuff. I'm just we're sitting in the same place right now, and I'm doing really well in my life, and I'm not going to talk anything about what you've done, but you're not in a place to be criticizing the life choices that I've made. Yeah. So it was weird, and it's especially weird talking to people who are saying oh yeah, I can't wait to have kids so I can raise a good basketball player, football player, or baseball player, or something like that.
They want to breed athletes and rappers and stuff like that.
It's really weird. It's hard, because I think that is one part of it, but there are a lot of people who want to do this too. There are a lot of people who do glorify those things, because they do see past all of the hood dreams or whatever. 'Cause, the reason why I do what I do with helping people is because I feel like we focus a lot on these like pipeline hood dreams, these like 1 in a million dreams that happens. Because like with basketball, the chance of like, if you fall along the way, are you gonna be okay a little bit? Not really, you know, but at least like
lotto tickets.
But like if you kind of fail along the way in the tech community, I feel like you end up pretty okay. Just if you're trying to get all the way to a top, I want to be a CEO, I want to be that or something like that. I feel like even if you don't do that, the knowledge that you pick up along the way is so lucrative.
Let me tighten up my question a
Okay.
bit. So I see a lot of people bang against Silicon Valley and big tech.
Yeah.
The voices are out there.
Yeah.
The movements are out there,
Yeah.
right? You guys need to change,
Yeah.
right? You guys have a lot of stuff to fix.
Mm-hmm.
But I do not see kind of, you mentioned that, hey, there's two sides of the problem, but both are serious. It's so much easier to bang against Twitter, Facebook, Silicon Valley, VCs, than to look introspectively at our community and say, regardless of what has happened before, regardless of how that happened, what can we do today to optimize our culture?
Yeah. I think it's hard because I do have a community of people who are really passionate about this and who like Black people who are really passionate about like making this community a lot better and like to focus more on that. But then yes, there is this whole thing where we're not focusing on these STEM jobs. Like, this is a very unpopular opinion. A lot of people don't agree with me, but I think it's just the engineer in me or whatever. But STEM has been changed to STEAM to be including the arts. Like, the arts are great, but the arts are something that people are already choosing. But I think that we need to start glorifying this lifestyle because it is a very stable lifestyle. Because not everybody is an entrepreneur, just the same way not everybody is like a professional basketball player or a rapper or a successful rapper or at that. But I think everyone has the capacity to learn how to code. We all have computers. Your phone is a computer. There's apps for learning how to code. Like, I just feel like it's a no-brainer to at least like have the knowledge, because even the knowledge with a non-tech field, everything's going to be tech enabled at some point. So having that knowledge on top of like a really strong art skill is beneficial. So, yeah. And even like, I mean, there's a bunch of engineers who play basketball, and then like if they eventually there's going to need to be like some robotics and stuff to help basketball players. Who's going to make that? Probably someone whoever's successful at that is probably good at both.
Yeah. So you mentioned you were a nerd. I'll call it geek. When you look at the lack of women, Black women specifically, that are in tech, that are in digital media, do you think it's more of a internal cultural thing, or is it more of an external thing in terms of, hey, it's Google's fault, hey, it's Facebook's fault, hey, it's the system's fault? Or do you think it's something going on culturally, more so in terms of how we perceive and promote being a geek is cool?
Oh, I definitely think it's more external.
It's more external.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, I hear these experiences where people say that geeks say that they were traumatized by other Black kids calling them geeks when they were kids, or saying that they're trying to be white. Like all my experiences, I've never had that experience. I've always been a bookworm. I've always been a nerd. I've had cousins who maybe harassed me for being a nerd, but not saying like, oh, you're trying to be white. I think they're just picking on me because I was the youngest and I was well behaved.
Yeah, I have a different experience, but I feel like if you had a pie chart in terms of Black culture and what's promoted, what's cool, who's successful, your role models, right? There can only be so much stuff in the pie chart, and you have a lot of athletes, right? Promotion. parents want to brag that, hey, my son or daughter, they went to University of Washington, they went to USC, they're playing ball, and so a lot of the energy and resources and cultural equity, we have seen people be successful in entertainment, athletics, and so there's a disproportionate amount of cultural equity that goes into these other fields. Not that these fields are bad, but it's at the expense of other things.
Yeah, I think part of that, I do agree with you there. I think part of the problem there, though, is that our people are not necessarily aware of all the other options that are out there for career endeavors, right? So like everyone knows about being a doctor, being a lawyer, being an athlete, or being some sort of celebrity, but people don't know like a product manager, right? They don't know how much a product manager could make. They don't know engineers, or like engineer is a very like high level, mysterious type of career path.
Yeah.
And they may, engineer could mean a lot of different things. And so I think a lot of it just has to do with exposure and maybe like education on this. I mean, I still have to explain. It's still weird to me to explain what I do to my family.
Yeah.
Like they'll ask me, what do I do? And I'm, it's still, I work in product, and I still try to struggle to explain to them what they do. They're very proud of me.
Yeah.
And they'll definitely brag about me to the rest of my family and their friends and things. But I think like trying to get a tangible explanation out of them is difficult, I think, because it's just kind of a foreign area of work.
But you would agree that when you look at the problem of a lack of geekness in Black culture, or the promotion of geekness in Black culture, that it can't all be external, meaning that we're going to wait for Silicon Valley, big tech, white folks to do something, and then we're going to get more geeked up in the culture. Would it be there? You do believe that there's room for internal optimization in the community?
Yes.
In terms of stuff that we can do, that we can change.
Yes, definitely. I just think that there's just a lot of education and awareness that probably needs to happen in order for us to kind of get there.
Yeah, and I think, I know it sounds small to folks, but when I listen to 444 and Jay-Z starts talking about Afrotech and talking about legacy wealth and talking about VC funds, that's how I believe Black culture, it's a step in terms of reprogramming. Right. Acknowledging that the culture is not perfect. There's some problems, and that we have to reprogram the culture for excellence. We got to optimize it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think it's because we're shunning it, though.
Yeah.
I think it's just like, hey, we're just not aware, or we don't know a lot. And a lot of this also just has to do with the images that we see of ourselves in media, right? So, like, you can have like a Facebook movie, but can you have a Facebook movie with a leading black role? Probably not. Like, we haven't seen anything like that. And so I think that Facebook movie at least maybe introduces some kids into like, hey, this is a type of career path that you can go to, quote unquote, get rich. But, that had like a lot of white people in there, right? But we don't have like a Black version. My assumption is maybe if we have more Black faces doing lots of different things, then that might help move the needle for us a little bit.